I'm reasonably okay at a lot of things, but I was like, I want to do this, I want to learn that, I want to do that.
Yeah. You made a few cosplays through the years, and I especially noticed the Monster Hunter one. How long did you take to make that one?
Okay, so by now I have made, I think it is 4 Monster Hunter armors. The first one back in 2020, the last one a couple of years ago. I actually currently have another Monster Hunter build in the works, so I'm pretty excited about that. But let's see, I think the first one, that was like a summer project at the height of the pandemic. I think maybe the costume itself took me like a couple of months, and the prop was like an additional month and a half. I think maybe the most time-consuming one to date is my most recent one, which is the Narga Kuga armor. It's like this big, fluffy, bat cat-like creature.
The one I distinctly remember is the one with the helmet.
Yes, that's the one. That was a pretty time-consuming one. One of the most time-consuming parts was first and foremost that I have pattern cut and shaved all of the faux fur, so that was also pretty time-consuming and a very fluffy affair. And also there are a lot of like hand dremeled parts, some foam work with a lot of hand dremeled shells and so on, and also stuff like prop weapons that have been 3D modeled with a lot of texturing and so on. So it was a pretty time-consuming build. I would say that from start to finish, I think it took me like maybe half a year in total, but then doing some other things on the side at the time.
Yeah, but 6 months, that's a long time, but it pays off. It looks amazing.
Thank you.
But you said something there. With the props, the prop weapons, you said modeled and detailed them. Do you model your own props?
Yeah, mostly, yeah. I do have a few props I use that have been made by other creators, but I would say that 80 to 85% of all the props and armor pieces and other pieces that are 3D printed are made by me from scratch.
Oh, that's impressive. Usually when people make cosplay with 3D printing, they find the files and then print them. I'm guilty of that. But that's mostly due to time constraints and me wanting to do the finishing job, not necessarily the modeling job. But you do everything yourself, right?
Yeah, and I work both with conventional 3D modeling and CAD modeling. When I got into 3D printing and 3D modeling, like so many others, I started with Blender and started doing like that conventional 3D modeling. And that's what I mostly did for several years, actually. But then I slowly started incorporating more CAD. I'm using Fusion 360. And nowadays, I would say like my main workflow is that for everything that requires anything parametrical, I do it solely in CAD. But if I'm working with more organic shapes, I usually start like drawing out the main parts in Fusion. I add any sort of like parametrical things I need. It could be like threads, it could be holder for magnets and that sort of thing. And then I take the file over in Blender and do like the sculpting, like stuff that's supposed to look like bone or battle damage and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because that's really hard to do in Fusion 360 or a CAD software.
Yeah.
I do think Fusion 360 have some kind of mesh modeling tools now.
Yes, you do have that, but it's a bit limited. It's fine for making like some softer models and so on. And I should mention that I have the hobbyist version. I don't have like the full version, so there might be some extra functionality there. But at least if you want to start like doing these like handcrafted clay sculpting like things, then that's preferable to do in stuff like Blender.
Yeah, Blender or ZBrush, depending on your budget.
Yeah.
So to say, ZBrush is expensive. Blender is free and really, really good.
Yeah.
For how did you start with cosplaying?
Okay, so I've been cosplaying for like 11, 12 years now. And this is sort of like, it's kind of a tale whenever I start talking about this, because I've liked making things since I was old enough to hold like a pencil or a pair of scissors or anything. Like, been drawing, painting. When I was like in elementary school, I would build these sort of elaborate structures from cardboard and that kind of thing. And I've also been naturally drawn to more like nerdy stuff, fantasy, science fiction, video games, anime, that kind of thing. And to me, it was more like a natural evolution. Is there a way for me to express myself creatively that also unites like my love for geekdom and typically like nerdy media? And cosplay was of course perfect for that.
Yeah, that's like a lot of people like start making things and then trying to make that part of their expression, really, and that's what you've done. Very successfully, I might add. It's always fun to see you in cosplay, if it's like the Monster Hunter thing or the Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan. Sorry, my ignorance is showing. And of course, there will be pictures of these cosplays shown in the video, so people can see the attention to detail that you have. And another question is, for a lot of these cosplays, a lot of these costumes, they are fairly all covering and seems to be sort of uncomfortable to spend time in, let's say.
Yeah, so it really depends on the build, but when it comes to, for instance, the Monster Hunter armor we have already been talking about, that's a build. I have worn it for full convention days, but usually when I go to conventions, especially ones that are like 2 or 3 days, I usually have what I call my heavy build day. I rarely bring more than one costume that's uncomfortable to wear for the convention, and then I usually will not spend as many hours. I usually prefer to bring at least one costume that's a bit more convenient, and then there are also like levels. For instance, the Monster Hunter armor I can't really do that much about, but say for instance, since we mentioned Attack on Titan, the uniforms are fairly okay to wear. There is quite a bit of work with like putting on a full harness and everything, which also I handmade from scratch, lots of hand stitching leather. But for instance, wearing the full ODM gear and so on, I may not wear like stuff like that for the whole day, or I may choose to opt out and just wear the uniform, that kind of thing. So I try to stay sane, and I'm not very young anymore either, so I'm starting to feel that I have like a tolerance level for how long I can be in a heavy costume.
And I also assume that the tolerance level is something you learn by failing or exceeding the tolerance level, and then you spend time reconvalescing into shape again.
Yeah, that's true. And there's also like, you also learn after a while how you can avoid some of the worst things, like for instance, how to secure wigs properly, make sure that maybe you have like blister support in your shoes, that kind of thing, that you don't wear props for maybe more than when you're doing photo shoots and so on. And also like some costumes that can be pretty challenging to wear are the one I call temperature schizophrenic ones. Those are the ones that are skimpy and hot at the same time. So, for instance, the Nagakuga armor, where like I have some really, really thick fur that's very hot, doesn't breathe at all, and at the same time, it's also a cosplay that shows a bit of skin. So, like
your bare midriff.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So on the one hand, it gets pretty clammy when you're in a hot indoor environment, but on the same time, it's not suitable for like anything but Norwegian summer outside.
You really need to know when to wear it and how to wear it.
There isn't really a good time.
No.
It's either too hot or too cold.
Yeah. Do you have any inspirations on people you look up to in the cosplay environment, or artists in general?
So usually when I get questions like this, I think it's hard to like mention single names, because there are many people who inspire me in different ways. It can be people who are just like really incredible crafters, like they make things that look incredible. And then it can also be like people who just do really cool things for the community. And then again, like people who just like manage to influence you and by just being cool people. So there are like different levels of this. So but then again, like if you ever go through like my follow list on Instagram, like whenever you see like more like craftsmanship oriented creator, of course, like whether it's more like a newer name or with a small following or like some of the huge like mastodons of the cosplay world, is like usually I'm inspired by that person.
Yeah, it's always fun to see somebody make something and then be inspired to do something not the same but similar, and use part of their process in your work.
Yeah, and actually, since we have been talking about the Nagakuga armor, when I started that project, there was actually one very big cosplayer who started the same project at about the same time. Lightning Cosplay, she's fairly famous. And originally, I had a pretty different approach for how I would do like the furry parts, but I actually saw her doing this sort of like scaly fur pattern, like, I want to do that too.
That's like inspiration in real time.
Yes.
So you mentioned you have another other Monster Hunter cosplay in the works now?
Yes.
When will you... do you have a deadline? Will you debut that at some time?
So I'm hoping that the costume, not the props, but the costume itself might be finished for DreamHack Stockholm later this fall. I'm invited as a cosplay guest judge there, and it would be really fun to have it ready. It depends, of course, how much time I actually will have working on that, but I've been making some progress lately, and I'm still hopeful that I can make it in time. The props are a bit more indefinite. I have like one, I'm making an insect glaive. Those who are into Monster Hunter will know what that is. There's a more like sword-like part, which is fairly straightforward, but there is also a bug creature that I will be making, and that one will have like both electronics, and there will be quite a few things that I haven't done before. So that one, and it belongs with the sword-like part. So since that's a bit more of a challenge for me craftsmanship-wise, I don't really have a set deadline. The armor comes first, and then I'll make the props in due time.
Yeah, and you mentioned 3D printing. You do a lot of 3D printing, and you use a lot of a filament called Vadiosher.
Oh yes.
That is like a cosplayer's wet dream, right?
Yes, to those who aren't familiar with this, now I guess that if you are familiar with 3D printing, then you are probably also familiar with TPU, even if you haven't necessarily worked with it yourself. And that's a rubber-like material, and it's pretty like similar to the stuff that you can find in like a lot of like soft rubber applications, basically anywhere.
Shoe soles.
Yes. But then again, it's still a bit stiff compared to like EVA foam that's used a lot by cosplayers. But there is one company that pioneered this, Colorfab. They took the same formula that's usually used for like creating lightweight PLA, foamy PLA, and added it to TPU. And then they ended up with a flexible material that's super lightweight, pretty foamy. And when you're done printing it, it behaves almost like EVA foam. And you can also do post-processing and painting very much in the same way that you do with EVA foam. So I have been using that quite a lot for the past couple of years, and I love it because it has many of the best properties from both 3D printing and foam work. You get the high fidelity of a 3D print, but you also get like this lightweight, soft, squishy part that you associate with EVA foam. So the downside is that it's a little bit expensive. You can't get it in Norway. And also like you do need to usually tune your printer a bit to get it right. I work with both a Bamboo X1C and a Purah XL, and both of those handle that one perfectly well.
Yeah, the problem with I printed some lightweight PLA, and the problem with the like all the foaming materials is that as soon as it hits the nozzle with the temperature, it starts expanding, meaning that you can't really retract, because once it's in the nozzle, it will flow out of the nozzle, even if you pull the filament back.
Yeah.
So you will get like knobs, usually, at least with the lightweight PLA, and I assume the same thing.
Yeah, that's one of the downsides. But the good thing is that VarioShore, you can actually sand it a bit.
Yeah.
So if it's not too bad, you can usually work around it. And what I've experienced sometimes is that when you sand these knobs, sometimes it will leave like this little hole underneath. But if you use a flexible filler, then that's a nice workaround. And one thing I found out there is that actually flexible acrylic medium for like acrylic painting works really well.
Yeah.
It's non-toxic and it has flexible properties, so it saves you a lot of the issues with like expensive and toxic specialty fillers, and you still get something that bends with the material.
Yeah, and one thing that's all now I might be making stuff up, but the VarioShore you can vary the hardness of the materials. You can have a flexi middle and a hard tip or a hard handle for a sword. I'm not sure how hard it'll get. But
So when you print it with like a regular flow rate, like at 1.0, then and also with like slightly lower temperature, then you get something that's pretty close to like 95A TPU. But if you go like say balls to the walls with lowering the flow rate, then you will get something that's, I think they say that the softest is like around 65A, something like that. I actually also made a comparison with the hardness of different EVA foam types, and the softest you can print VarioShore, and there is like an overlap between the softer end of VarioShore and the EVA foam that's typically called high density.
yeah, that's so it's fairly easy to incorporate into cosplay, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also assume that making dual material filament with the Prusa XL, for instance, where you have a PLA core with the VarioShore handle, making it a lot better to hold instead of just gripping PLA.
Yeah, and you also have, I haven't used those functions that much extensively yet, but there are also some nice methods you can use where you have these meshing between non-bonding filaments, so you can still get stuff like PLA and TPU to bond to each other, which you normally can't.
Yeah, it's more like not fusing, but a mechanical lock.
Yeah, it's basically you do something like this kind of.
Yeah, and the slicer handle that perfectly.
Yeah.
You also play another role in the cosplay scene here in Norway, because you're part of the Magicon team, which was my first convention that I ever went to. So thank you for bringing me out of my shell. It's been a fun journey so far, and you recently upscaled the entire event.
Yeah.
And where does this end? What's your goal for the Magicon?
Our long-term goal for Magicon. To give a bit of Norwegian cosplay history, we used to have one large-scale convention in Norway. The Seconde went bankrupt. It was 2017 or 2018, and after that, there haven't been like any large conventions that have come around to fill the void. We do, have, of course, have events such as Spill Expo and so on, but they are more solely catered toward the gaming audience. And even though they have like a nice cosplay scene and so on, it's not their primary target. And we are first and foremost a cosplay and geek convention, and we are hoping that in the long term that we can fill that goal. So at their largest, I think they had like 14,000 visitors, and to get like somewhere in that size range would of course be cool. And a more ongoing goal is that we continuously want to introduce new guests, new thoughts, new ideas to the Norwegian cosplay community. And I think we have succeeded pretty well at that so far. But this is, of course, a ball we want to keep rolling forward.
Yeah, it's Magicon is one of my favorite conventions to go to, and I might be biased, but like knowing you, knowing Stoffer, knowing the people that's behind it really helps. And I've been lucky enough to be getting to know both you and other people behind other cons and making this entire Norwegian cosplay scene feel like a family. And there's so many good people in this environment that it's. Yeah, I'm glad you found me and pulled me out of my shell and made me join. Really appreciative of that.
Yeah, it's also been really fun to see how the ball has been rolling for you for the past few years.
Yeah, it's been a lot, but it's been really, really fun. So it wouldn't have happened without MagicCon, that's for sure. I'm curious about where what your moonshot is, like the moonshot being a big goal, a dream, something you want to achieve. Doesn't have to be achievable, but something you work towards. So what is your moonshot?
So cosplay-wise, I would say that it would be a dream to be able to collaborate with, like, for instance, a large gaming company and that kind of thing. I so far haven't done any commercial builds, and getting to that's of course a goal in of itself, but it would be really cool to be able to score like a deal with one of the big ones. Of course, the downside there is that like my following isn't that huge, and also I'm not a full-time cosplayer, so I'm not the type of person who has the capacity to like push out a huge build in 2 weeks like you can do when you do it full-time. But still, it's still a goal to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think like in Norway there isn't that much room to do that. I can't really see many people doing that. I see some people for the movie premieres and stuff showing up or being invited, but having somebody pay you to make a cosplay and having the budget to go all out, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. And there was a little bit of that in Norway a few years back, pre-pandemic, but I haven't really seen anyone been doing that in Norway lately. So of course that would mean collaborating either with a Nordic office or European office.
Yeah. It would be fun to see you at the big stage there, and it would be deserved. You are a really talented cosplayer, and seeing how much work you put into everything, because you don't do just 3D printing, you do sewing, you do dyeing, you do everything yourself. So that's amazing.
I call myself a potato or a jack of all trades. I just like love learning, and that's one of the big appeals about cosplay for me. The infinite potential to just get a reason to learn new crafts. And the downside is probably that I'm not hyper specialized in anything. I would say that maybe a bit towards the 3D printing side, but otherwise, like, I'm reasonably okay at a lot of things. But I was like, I want to do this, I want to learn that, I want to do that.
Yeah, but reasonably okay is usually better than 90% of people, right? So being reasonably okay at stuff, and that's you downplaying yourself, by the way, is a really great stepping stone to making great items and cosplays and everything. So it's always fun to see, and I look forward to seeing your new Monster Hunter cosplay.
Thank you, and I'm also learning new things there.
Yeah?
I have actually started dipping my toes a little bit into shoemaking.
Okay.
Yes.
Please.
I mean, like, it is mostly techniques I work with already. It's mostly like leather work and sewing and a bit of 3D printing and that kind of thing. But I was just like looking at it, and I was thinking, okay, this is actually achievable. And I already know a few things. And but the shoe lasts are so expensive. No, I can 3D print those.
But that's like a fun thing, because when you have a certain skill at things, you look at somebody doing something and you think, oh, that's easy. And then you start doing it and it's not that easy, no? I need to learn this and that and that, and need to take care of that. And so you actually learn a great deal by, let's say, underestimating stuff, saying, I can do this myself, and then doing it yourself, and then learning that it's much harder than you think.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I hope they turn out well and that they're actually wearable for an extended amount of time. That's the thing I'm worried about because, okay, something that you have, for instance, sewn, you know that there are a few imperfections, but it looks okay and it's okay to wear. And even if it's a bit uncomfortable, most of us can deal with uncomfy clothing for some amount of time. But like, this is going on my feet.
Yeah, like blisters are a pain.
Yeah.
So, and they, like, bad piece of clothing is like, this is uncomfortable, and then you take it off and then it's gone. With a blister, it stays.
Yeah, your mistakes, you're punished for a while.
Thank you for having this chat with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'll be sure to leave your links in the description of this video, and I will steal some of your photos to use in as a B-roll to show the amazing cosplays you've done.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.